All right, I'm Austin Light with American Demon Comics. I've put our URLs here. Just go check us out at whatever avenue you want to do that. And I'm joined by Brandon Ingram with Dismay Comics.
Thank you for having me.
Doing
Thank you.
good. Heard I just talked to you about the proofs and everything. You're talking to your printer about making changes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty much all narrowed down. Like I got proofs of both of them. The first time they didn't send you the variant proof. For some reason, I remember them sending both proofs before when I used them, but like I'm gonna send a variant proof this time, and both look good.
And is that Comics
Everything looks
Wellspring?
good. Yeah, Comics Wellspring, like pretty much the only issue, and like it's kind of an issue with them, but also like a preference with me is like the interior page type. I'm trying to narrow down because this interior page type worked well for Dismay Avenue, but
Mm-hmm.
for this, I'm a bit iffy on it. I might want a different page type. So it's overall like I'm not like putting myself on a pedestal or anything or talking down to anyone. Most people like if they saw these interiors and it was their book, they're like, "Yeah, this looks fine. Let's go ahead and ship it out
Right.
to people." But I'm like so stupidly like particular with my books and
Oh
stuff to
yeah,
where like I
yeah.
want it exactly how I envisioned it, basically.
Right. Like the that point .5 comic I got, I was like, man, I really don't want to sell it for like $4 or $5 because I don't feel like it was done in my most perfect way. And everybody's like, no, just sell it for what you need to sell it for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But we
people will
very
buy it, especially at cons.
mhm,
Like the comic fans that are there, they'll buy it as well as like even though some people might say, "Oh, $4 or $5," or you might be thinking that's
mhm,
like $4 or $5 isn't much for a something at the convention, a
mhm,
souvenir or whatever. Even if you weren't there to get a comic, $4 or $5 for something from the con is nothing.
mhm. Well, I'm just it's funny how as creators kind of see like we want it to be very pristine. Like we want that final to be as good as we can make it. And if it's not, I don't feel like the value's there.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it also comes down to like myself also looking at other indie comics because I'll back Kickstarters and get indie comics and stuff. Sometimes I'll just get the digital if the physical's too expensive or whatever it may be. But when I get those physicals, sometimes I do see that it's like so in paper quality. Like the book might be good,
Hmm.
but so it could be so in paper quality. But then sometimes I look and see like, oh, like I like this paper quality to where I haven't done it yet, but with some of them, I kind of want to reach out and see what printers they use, as well as the paper types they use. Because, like, there's one I looked at that was like, ooh, this is nice. And I don't think they went through Comics Wellspring.
Hmm.
And if it's not much more expensive than Comics Wellspring, like, maybe I'll try this printer next time or
Right.
whatever.
Um, if you see me like start writing something down, I'm just taking a note about like maybe a timestamp or maybe something insightful you said or anything like that. So
Yeah, that's
I
no
don't want
problem.
you to think I'm just like, yeah,
No.
whatever. I'm just gonna.
No, you're good. You're good. You're my therapist taking notes, being
Yeah.
sure to mark specific things of like this is
Like
a red
signs of
flag.
schizophrenia. No. Um, but happy Steve Irwin Day today that we're recording right now. Is suddenly Steve Irwin Day. I didn't know this, but Google has been very adamant about showing. So he was
Nice,
a
nice.
childhood hero of mine. I loved him. I would go out in khaki shorts and the closest button up short sleeve I could get and look for lizards and snakes around my property. But
You know what's weird? I'm not trying to like put it on a darker tone, but it did make me think like there's those events like whether it's a celebrity death or like a national tragedy or whatever it may be. There's those events where like some people can recall like where they were when they heard blank,
mhm.
that sort of thing. It's so weird. I remember where I was when
I
I heard that Steve Irwin
I do too.
died. I was at school and our teacher told us, and it was a substitute teacher as well. But a substitute
Oh,
teacher who told
yeah.
us, and we were all just kind of like just I mean we were this was like
the whole,
fourth
the,
grade, I think, so we're just kind of all like, what?
yeah,
Steve Irwin died?
the key demographic of Steve Irwin at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so weird. But yeah, like and speaking of Steve Irwin, I was at my grandma isn't Steve Irwin, but it ties with this.
yeah.
I was at my grandma's house maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe less than that. And I was going through some of her old VHSs because I remember when we would go there, like we just watch VHS
Hmm.
tapes, and usually it was like the same 5 to 10 VHS tapes over and over, basically. Like one was called Warriors of Virtue. I got that from her. I was like, I'm keeping this because I remember watching this a ton. But I was also looking through, and there were like a couple Steve Irwin tapes, the Crocodile Hunter tapes and stuff. And I was like, oh, like this is awesome. And like I got those. I was like, hey, can I have these? She's like, yeah, they're just collecting dust. So yeah, it's interesting because like when you had put that in the notes, I was like, dang, like Steve Irwin was still in my life like a week and a half ago.
Yeah, yeah. I can't get through TikTok without his son popping up on
Oh
at
yeah,
some
yeah,
point. Um,
yeah.
yeah, there's multiple times throughout the year since his death that I um recall him some. He pops up in conversation, so it's a very Ned Stark kind of death. Um, but I was waking up for school, and I remember my mom. I don't know if I actually can't remember if my mom broke it to me or if she went to turn on the news because I know the news was on. I know that I saw it on the news, but I can't remember if it was my mom or the news that said it first. Um, but I remember that morning, um, and I was just kind of in shock. I didn't know how to like really take it. It they it said he died in 2006, so I was either in fifth grade or going into sixth grade. Because my the grade levels matched with my grade school, like the grade school years matched with the year that it was for
Yeah,
me
yeah.
because I graduated in 2012. Um, but yeah, I had grown up to that point as far back as I can remember. I'd grown up watching him, and he had so many different shows. But I remember specifically Croc Files was the
Oh
one that I
yeah.
watched, and it had like this stupid catchy theme song that I kind of remember. But yeah, happy Steve Irwin Day. It's on November 15th because that was his favorite um, Galap- Galapagos turtles birthday, Harriet. So, which I find kind of strange that uh, he the November 15th was important to him, but it was important to him for his favorite turtle, and we kind of lose like we kind of lose that meaning for the turtle and put it onto him. Um, but I would assume that that went through Mindy and
Yeah, yeah.
Mindy and they approved that. So
And what is awesome through it all though is seeing his his specifically like his children as well as his wife, but seeing his children like carry on that legacy, live on
hmm
that legacy. It wasn't a thing where like they grew up and they're like, oh, I hate what dad does. It's like
yeah,
no, they
I
loved being a part of that, and that's who they are today,
I was
basically.
trying to explain that to my girlfriend. I was like, sometimes your offspring don't really have an interest or the drive or the motivation or whatever that you have for a particular thing that you're involved in. Um, and but like she said that they grew up with these two parents are all around wildlife, and that they were taught not to be afraid of it. They were taught to respect it. They were taught, all that. And then they were very close to the zoos, and they obviously had the genes for it. So it's like maybe it's obvious that they went that route, but also I've seen the reverse in many
Yeah. I've
situations.
seen a bunch of people who, not just saying it's like animal handlers or anything like that, but like other professions, whether it's
hmm
filmmakers, these people, that people, where like their children grow up around that, but like by the time their children become adults, their children are like, I don't want anything to do with that, and
Yeah, they're
that's
like,
no
no,
problem
get
at
off.
all. I completely get it,
hmm
but like to see uh, children that have an appreciation for their parents' work, and they're clearly had to be a good home life, or at least a good role modelship through Steve and through his wife for them to be like, hey, I want to do what mom and dad do. As opposed to if it wasn't so good, they probably would have rebelled and turned away.
hmm Well, um, they it. I'm glad for them. I'm glad to still have a new generation for the kids and everything that
Yeah.
that do get to experience his kids being his son is almost a one-to-one carbon copy like of Steve. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
um, so I'm glad that they have that love and joy still in the world with his legacy.
Yeah.
Um, so next up are updates for us. I'm 1.5 pages away from finishing the story part of issue 1 for Envy, and since you've read the webtoon, it this first issue entails all of the soul trial and a soul's hell where she's falling, um, and it also has a little hint of where I picked up on at the very end. We get a little cameo of Asmodeus, but it stops there. And I'm planning on, before I fully release it and stuff, um, I did it. I feel like I did it faster than I anticipated. There's some panels that I'm gonna go back and redo. I already did some. I threw this. I'm in the Comic Lab Discord, so I put it through some critiques, and a lot of the critiques have to do with like the lettering and where you put word bubbles and stuff. So um, there's there was just some minor text things that I had to fix, um, but there's just a few panels I might go back and push a little bit more or completely redo and have that ready for the print. And then I also want to add the police lineup, uh, kind of like your concept art, but a little bit more detailed. info page for my characters that are in that issue specifically, not any characters that haven't been seen yet. Um, and so that would give it a little bit more content, make it a little bit more valuable. I think. I mean, you see that in Attack on Titan, and you see that uh, in other things. I mean, it made a great poster for Cowboy Bebop, so I thought that would be a nice little fun addition to do.
Yeah,
What do you
that's
think?
awesome.
And what are your updates?
Yeah, I think that's really awesome. And like that's crazy how like fast you've gone with this issue one. That's awesome that you just got a page and a half. You had mentioned you'll do the edits, but yeah, that's really awesome. So like obviously there's not like a fine date that you'll like put it in a convention or put it on Kickstarter, but like what's a rough time you're thinking about doing that?
So I'll probably be done with it. I think the next page and a half will probably be done by Thanksgiving, and then the editing and redos and all that stuff might take till about the first week of December. I'm hoping to have it done by that anime convention, that small anime convention on the 17th. That's the deadline for me that I'm gonna make is have it done by the next event that I'm going to. That's on December 17th.
That's awesome. So are you planning to have copies there or have the book done?
I want to have
Uh,
copies there. I want to be able to
nice, nice.
have that ready to go. And around the corner from that is the Horror Con, the Rocket City Horror Con, in January. So I definitely want to have it done by then, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is easily going to be possible. I've been put on the waiting list for the Huntsville Comic Expo, and when I'm on a waiting list, I don't really expect it. I'm just like, I'm on the waiting list. If I
Is that the
can,
one in April?
yes, that's their
Okay.
biggest one. Um, a lot of people tell me it's the biggest convention, like almost bar none in Alabama, but I also
Yeah, yeah.
don't think that a lot of those people have gone to things like Comic Con or some of the conventions. Like I don't know how big the ones are in it around Mobile in your area of Alabama. Um, so I'm reluctant to say it's the biggest, but it's probably on par with Comic Con.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say.
from what I've heard, like and like pictures I've seen because I've got some friends up in Huntsville. Um, at least for Alabama, it does seem like maybe the biggest in Alabama. I haven't been to Birmingham, the Birmingham Comic Convention,
Right,
so I
yeah,
don't
there's
know.
also that one. And
Yeah, yeah, I
I mean
don't
that
know
one had
how that one is.
Gustavo. That had the
Yeah,
villain from Breaking Bad, and I'm like,
yeah,
they're flaunting that they had William Shatner up there, and I'm like, yeah, William Shatner's cool, but he's kind of past like the
yeah,
the date, you know.
yeah.
So
The one that I think is like, I mean, like, it's Florida, but I'm basically going to count it as Alabama because
mhm,
it's like 40 minutes away from Mobile.
mhm,
Like Pensacon in Pensacola might be one of the biggest ones. From the way it looks like it might be bigger than Huntsville. The issue with Pensacon is like it's nearly impossible to get on that list. Like
oh
I
yeah,
for 2024 because it's like 40 minutes away from me. I wouldn't have to do a hotel or anything
right.
like that. Um, for 2024, it's what was I about to say? Because now I was thinking about something else. I was remembering an email that I actually got. Oh, 2024. So I I reached out to them back in like June because they opened the ability to buy a table and stuff around that time. And this was maybe a week into them opening it up. I reached out to them like, hey, like just seeing if there's any availability. All gone. Like
Yeah.
within a week, it was all gone. And they said in the future, like for 2025, they're likely going to do like a raffle system
Oh wow.
where everyone can apply and then they'll just
Mhm.
randomly pick. And then they'll reach out to you. If you're able to still do it, good, that sort of thing. So I mentioned all that. Then I remembered I did the Pensacon Halloween Fest, which isn't at Pensacon, but it's the people that run it or do this. Once that was done, like a week later, they sent me an email saying like, "Hey, like to everyone that was at Pentagon Halloween Fest, like, hey, like, there are still a few spots open for Pentacon, the main event,
Mhm.
and here are the costs if you're wanting to do it and stuff." I looked at the cost and I was then like, okay, I'm probably not ever going to do Pentacon. Like it's I get it because it is a
Yeah.
big convention, but there's conventions that are as big, if not bigger, that don't cost as much. It was at least $500 for the weekend. I think it was a little bit
Wow.
more. It was somewhere between $500 and $700.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm
No.
good. I'm just going to stick to these like ultimately they are smaller conventions,
Mhm.
but I still do great at them and it's a great time. I'm going to stick to these like smaller conventions that cost me less than $100 for the weekend.
Yeah. The Huntsville
Um,
con was 225.
oh, that's not bad. Yeah,
For well, it's
and
for an
for like
artist table, but yeah, it's 225.
yeah, that's not too bad.
And they
Like
say they were telling me that like, there's just an almost infinite amount of traffic that goes through that convention. So I was like, I could probably comfortably spend 225 on it, see how it goes.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah.
Like one that I did fairly well at. Ultimately, it was my first convention I did, as well as like it was a good experience. Like not just like me vending, but like every now and then I'd get up, walk around,
Hmm.
see stuff. Was Fan Expo New Orleans. I did that in 2023 back in January. That was 325 for the weekend. That was
Hmm.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which at the time I thought was really expensive. But then as I was doing conventions, I was like, oh, that's actually not that expensive. The expensive part is like having to stay in New Orleans, like
Yes.
get a
Yeah.
hotel in New Orleans. If I live near there, I'd probably do it again.
Hmm.
I didn't do amazing, like in terms of like making my money back. There's no way I made my money back because it was my first convention.
Yeah.
I got a hotel for 3 nights, as well as the table costs, as well as
Hmm.
eating and stuff. Like, yeah, there's no way I would make my money back. But ultimately, it was a good time to where like if that was closer, I probably would do it again. Uh, both for vending as well as it was a good experience. Because sometimes there's those like the smaller conventions it's a decent experience, but you're ultimately there because it's like, hey, like I'm doing good at vending and
Hmm.
stuff. But there's some shows that kind of justify where it's like I'm doing so at vending or I'm doing decent at vending, but it's a pretty good time because there's a lot going on and I
Right.
can check that out and stuff. So that can be the plus with bigger conventions is like you're not just like oh, I'm just here for vending. If
Hmm.
you have that mindset with bigger conventions and like you're an indie person like fairly new at conventions, then like might be kind of disappointed by the end. But if you have that mindset of like, hey, this is like kind of a vacation for me in a way, where
Right.
like I'm doing fairly decent at vending, but hey, I got to go see this person or I
Hmm.
got to see all this cool stuff at this convention or whatever it may be. Like yeah, you make the best of it. You make the
Right.
most of it.
So that was kind of like the Ozark experience for me, um, ultimately, I always just kind of thought that like artists would be kind of like guests for a convention, especially if it's like comic oriented or themed around what you're making. Um, so like you would kind of be put on like a guest kind of status at some point if you were like showed up enough or had enough of a portfolio.
Hmm.
You know, so um, but the more that I look at guest rosters, they're not like they do get cosplayers in, and I was thinking like we would be on the level of like a professional cosplayer, because everything we do is kind of like our profession. And um, but the more that I look into uh, each convention, it's not like that. You're still just kind of the standard artist at your standard convention, or
Like I'm not.
at least I don't see that as early as I thought I would. Maybe like way in the future, like if you're like Sarah Scribbles kind of
Yeah,
status.
yeah. No, I completely agree with you, and I'm not like pointing fingers or bashing any one convention. I've just it's not just the conventions that I've been to. I've heard it from other people at the conventions they go to as well. Is like, yeah, like you could be a cosplayer with 40, 50,000 followers on Instagram or whatever it
Hmm.
may be, and you got a guest spot. Like that's good. You could also be um, you could be an author of novels, not
Hmm.
comics, an author of novels, and maybe you have two,
Right.
maybe three. You have two, three, and not even saying they're like in Barnes and Nobles or Books a Million,
Hmm.
and not even saying like you're doing crazy sales on Amazon, but there is that thing of like he did write real books. He didn't write
Yeah.
picture books. He wrote two of them even. That's pretty high esteem. Let's get him as a guest. Whereas when it comes to comics, what I've noticed is if you haven't written for Marvel, DC, any of the big indie stuff like Boom,
Hmm.
Image, or even like IDW, if you haven't written for any of those big name publishers, you're not getting a guest spot.
Right.
um, unless you're someone uh, uh, like the Comic Lab guys, where like
Yeah.
your self published stuff you've been doing for 10, 20 years, to
Yeah.
where like you have made a giant following yourself without those
Hmm.
publishers, then you can get a guest spot. But if you're doing strictly indie stuff, like the only way you're getting a guest spot within your first 10 years of doing conventions is if it's a very small convention, like
Hmm.
just starting out, or you wrote for one of these bigger publishers, even the big indie publishers.
Hmm.
And not even saying like there's notable indie publishers that are there, and I wouldn't even say like just because you wrote for them doesn't mean you'll get a guest spot. Like Aftershock. If you wrote one book for Aftershock, I don't know if you're going to get a guest spot. Like just there's stuff like that.
Hmm. Yep. That's what you've kind of come to expect. But I mean, uh, with how the Ozark Con went, it was like such a welcoming and fun time, and Stan did all the artists a solid. Said, "Look, we will, if we can afford it, we'll help pay for you to be down here, and you'll have a free booth, uh, because we want to support artists." That's as close to a guest experience that I've had, and that was
I was about
really
to say
good.
that is like with Deep South Comic Con, that's the closest I've been to being a guest, other than Free Comic Book Day. Free Comic Book Day,
Mhm.
amazing. But Deep South Comic Con, yeah, like that was the first time we're like, oh. part of this is like I don't have to pay like
Mm-hmm.
this. We signed a contract and stuff. Like they covered my table costs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they I had sent them the application and stuff and sent them photos, and they really wanted me to be there. And they asked like, hey, like what can we help with, or what can we do to get you here? And like I didn't want to. I in my head knew I wasn't big enough to be like, could you cover table costs and my hotel costs? I was like, no, like if you can cover table costs, I can cover me
Yeah.
being down there.
Well,
Because yeah, I stayed at like that microtel. It was
they
like $80. It
yeah,
wasn't that much.
that's what I did.
Yeah,
But they they had made it sound like they were like, we can let you come for free, but we can't cover your hotel because we've already exhausted the funds for covering
yeah,
people's
yeah.
hotels. So they didn't pay for my hotel, but it sounds like if you were early enough in, they'll do that for you.
I think you're right because I contacted them about being a guest. I had that type of ego, I guess. I was like, it wasn't really an ego. It was more just like, eh, the
Yeah.
worst they can say is no. I
Hmm.
mean, like that's ultimately the thing. So I contacted them about that, and they it's all my stuff, and they were like, yeah, like we like this. The only thing is, I contacted them back in like when was the convention, by the way? I'm trying to remember. Was it
August,
August?
like,
Okay, I
yeah, it was.
contacted them towards the end of May, I think, maybe early June, something like that. So it's like they've been planning this for a year. They
Hmm.
already have all the guests lined up. They got the posters with the guest on them and stuff. So they're kind of like, it's kind of too late for us to do
Right.
guest spots, but we do want you here, and they were able to cover the table costs.
You know what? We might want to go ahead and reach out to them when we're done with
Yeah, what is it again? It's
this.
November. Yeah, I should probably reach out to them.
um, so yeah, I'm planning on just trying to pop up at different cons. I want to do as many panels as I can do, and I want to see if I can work on me being more entertaining as a person because I think that would place some value into you not only driving traffic but also people looking at you to be a guest
Yeah, yeah.
for a convention. So um, I signed up to do a fan table at Comic Con, um, where it's free. I just promote. There's no vending. There's no fee. There's no anything like that. It's just here's my business card, maybe a flyer, maybe a zine that's like a short description or introduction. Um, and by then my goal is to have like a nice or like a decent landing page and a decent navigation going on for like my website, um but that way uh can just leave the fan table do its thing. um Hopefully they get me in for a panel, and uh I can do that and promote that way. But um I'm going to be looking for kind of like opportunities like that if I don't exactly know how it's going to go.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's pretty solid. Yeah, for me, it's bad. There's a virtual con at the end of this month that I'm doing two panels on. I can't remember the name of the con, and they haven't sent me the times yet. So it's the weekend of November 24th to 26th. Either November 24th or 26th, I'll like virtually be doing a panel and stuff. But that's so
right
not
after
even like talking
Thanksgiving.
about, yeah, yeah. Not even talking about like virtual conventions, but like in-person conventions. Something that I have seen is like if you're able to bring value aside from like your vending table, there's like more incentive for them
Mm-hmm.
to cover your table costs or whatever it may be. Like you doing panels. I think that's a really good idea because I've seen conventions. There was one that had asked me if I wanted to speak or do a panel. And at the time, I was just kind of uh, like, my answer wasn't no. My answer was just like,
I didn't think about
yeah,
it.
I can if you want me to. Like, if you want me to, I
Mhm.
can, I guess. Like I didn't really think about like, oh, like what would I talk about? Like ultimately what I would talk about is like a podcast I did with Tio like 2 years ago, which is
Mhm.
like how to make a comic, but not like the basic way where it's like here's this. Like no, it's like getting into the nitty gritty of like even some of the boring stuff, but not staying on that too much.
Right.
Like work for hire contracts, like finding printers. If you want to do barcodes, where to go for all that bull
Mhm.
crap. But but yeah, I think when it comes to a convention and you're an indie creator, if you can add some sort of value other than just you being there and vending, if you can add some sort of value to the convention, whether it's doing a panel or this or that, whatever it may be, more likelihood of them covering some of your costs, if not the
Mhm.
whole thing.
Well, um, I do want to mention that like conventions are not like our heart and soul. I think we talk about
No,
conventions a lot
no,
on here.
yeah,
But they're just really fun, and they're even more fun if you can, if you find that like niche, or find that way to like make it worth it. Um,
yeah,
because they're fun as an attendee, and if you uh, get to be a part of it too, it's even better. Like,
oh yeah,
so that's why we kind of fixate on this sometimes.
yeah, and that's the thing is like, yeah, my heart and soul is not into conventions. If I stop doing conventions altogether, that doesn't mean I'm not making comics anymore. I was making comics before I started doing conventions, so
Hmm.
I would just keep making comics. But yeah, like I'm not going to do as many as I did this year because this year was kind of a test year. It was my first
Right.
time doing conventions, sort of. Next year, I finally got up with the gamers and geeks guys from Mobile. They haven't mentioned the specific conventions for each of these dates, but they sent me the dates of their next conventions for 2024 because at their shop itself, like it's a big gaming hobby shop, but it's huge. It's like the
Hmm.
size of a warehouse. Um, they're having two, one's in like March, one's in like towards the end of June. I'll probably do at least one of those, if not both. And then MobiCon is also, I think, in September of next year. I'll likely do that again. Um, and then obviously free comic book day. I'm always going to do free
Yeah.
comic book day. So at least like 3 or 4 like spots or conventions I'll do next year. And with the Mobile stuff, what helps me a ton is like Tio had mentioned to me, like, hey, like to save us both money if you want, like, because he recently got an apartment. It was like, if you want, you can just crash on my couch. Like, we can
Hmm.
go to the convention, drive back. It's less than a 50-minute drive. Drive back to his apartment, crash on his couch, get up next morning, go. I'm okay with that, honestly. That saves me the hotel costs because really that's the biggest expenditure when it comes to these
Hmm.
conventions is hotel costs. Like, if it wasn't for hotel costs, I'd be doing a whole lot more conventions. If it wasn't for hotel costs and if I actually lived near conventions,
Yeah.
like that's the big thing.
Well, let's see. I'm gonna get us to the next topic. I was gonna propose. Um, I had an idea for another zine. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, during the Halloween idea, but I am wanting to make more small zines, and have them be kind of informative, like about fitness and everything, like, because that's another part of my life that I've never going to abandon and I find highly important. Um, and then, if I can, if that catches if that catches some fire, some sparks, um, I'm wondering what other zines I might do. Maybe like a cryptid description zine. Like you got one page for Bigfoot and another page is the Jersey Devil. It's just like a little small encyclopedia kind of thing. Uh, but I'm trying to think of things that are cheap and valuable to a reader. Um, what do you think?
I think that's a really good idea. Like if it doesn't really cost you much to make, as well as like time wise, it doesn't take like super long. I think that's a good idea. It's more stuff to like in some instances be able to give out in just promotion wise, and then in other instances like extra stuff on your convention table that people can buy, or whatever it may be. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think like do that if you want to like do another zine type thing, maybe not like the not entirely the Halloween thing we were talking about, but more the like if you just had like a 6 to 8 panel uh, story that you just made up, like short little comic. It's 6 to 8 panels, and like you were talking about with the Halloween thing, it's small. It's pretty small to where each page is a panel basically.
Yeah.
Just flip through. Um, like, yeah, I think that's a good idea because it seems like it'd be very cheap for all of these, as well as it's more stuff to help get your name and brand out with. Kind of.
Well, I was thinking that just now as we were talking that I could do this with just I could make the encyclopedia of my own characters of
Yeah.
have Envy as a page, Michael as a page,
Oh yeah.
Asmodeus as a page, Sam as a page, um, because anything that I can make more assets involving the comic is kind of the direction I want to go.
Yeah.
But I also the fitness one is is interesting to me because fitness was the original concept I wanted to do getting into my creative side. So um, I wanted to make fitness workouts that revolved around already established characters like the Armored Titan, um, well, any of the Titans from Mega Titan, the Spider-Man workout. What all is that going to involve? How is he going to, you know, maintain his strength to do X, Y, Z? What does he need to work on? Um, the flexibility and all that stuff's kind of included in it, but I ran into the issue of none of these are my properties, and I'm gonna have to figure out all the licensing details to make that work. And I'm starting at ground zero. I have nothing to show for a licensing um, proposal. To like, I have no money to invest, no anything. So I was like, so I can't just start doing that. Um,
Best bet might possibly be because you can even take it like a ultimately it is these fitness workouts, but it is could still somewhat be like comic like, where you create like your own original character, whether he's a
well,
bodybuilder or whatever it may be.
that's what I mean. I'll have like
Yeah,
my
yeah,
own established characters already from the comics I'm making
yeah,
that now they can be the the idol of the program.
yeah, exactly.
Um, that's just future ideas, and but I also don't want to deviate. I wanted to have your opinion of like deviating from the main comic because that's going to take some time. That's going to take a chunk of like a month or two to establish.
Yeah.
Um,
And the smaller stuff, really, if it doesn't take you that much time to do, and number one, if you really want to do it, like in terms of like I'm passionate about making this zine or this or that, whatever it may be, that's number one. And then if it doesn't take you that like fairly that long to do, like yeah, do that along with the comic. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then like it's mentioned before. It's been mentioned before by ton of comic creators and stuff, but like it just made me think with the whole getting these established characters that have trademarks or have like licenses and
mhm.
stuff like that for someone's comic or someone's advertisement or whatever it may be. Like at the end of the day, if someone has a good idea that like let's say I have an idea for Iron Man. If I was ever to write Iron Man, I've got this really good idea. I can take him to different places. Um, a lot of times when people look at those ideas or those scripts that they wrote, you can tweak it even just a tiny bit to where
Mhm.
it's like it's the same story, but oh, now it's not Iron Man, it's my original character.
Mhm.
It's my original character that like yes, it started out as an Iron Man idea or an Iron Man comic, but now like I made it my own because I already made the story. The story is my own. I just have this character that I'll never get the license to or likely
Right.
never be able to write. Just throw him out, put my original character in, and then boom. I think that's a good way to go about making comics, or if someone has an idea where they're just like, I gotta like I wanna do this with this character or whatever. Like
Mhm.
that's good and all. Like yes, I want to one day maybe write for some established characters and stuff, but at the end of the day, you don't own that character. You don't own
Yeah.
pretty much anything with that character. You wrote that story. Some people will remember you for that story, but at the end of the day, you have no control over that character or anything.
Mhm.
So it's like, oh, like if I make it my own, I can do whatever I want
And that
with it.
story could go potentially go out the window.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I actually faced that a lot. When I role played in World of Warcraft, I would have a character that was following the lore in some kind of some method of writing or something, and they're part of this universe and they're part of this lore, and then Blizzard would be like, that lore's not so important anymore. We're gonna just that never happened, and
Yeah.
this happened instead, and I have to be like, no, that's one. That's a horrible writing decision, and then two, you're screwing up all of the role play like world and universe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing, especially if people are writing for Marvel or DC. Don't feel like your thing. Obviously, love everything you write. You should at least like what you write. If not, then like it's just miserable. Um, but at the end of the day, like if you're writing for Marvel or DC, don't get overly attached to that story or idea that you came up with them, because when it comes to those companies, within a year, if not a few years, all of that will be retconned and it will
Yeah,
no matter. It'll no longer matter in that world.
yeah,
Everything you built will no longer matter in that world.
exactly. Well, um, I think that do you have any additions to talk about or any ideas?
I did want to mention one thing. I am almost done writing this one series. I talked to you
Hmm.
about it before. It's an anthology series I'm writing. I'm almost done writing it. I just wrote the 23rd story. like the comic script and everything last night. And now all I have left, because I basically have written 6 issues, but like each issue has a ton of different stories in it. I've written 6 issues, or will have written 6 issues. I just need to write one 2-page story, and then all 6 issues are completely filled. And then Tio, once like Thanksgiving break and Christmas break happens, because he's in college and he also has a job. Once that happens, he's going to write. He's going to write at least 20 pages, basically like 10 pages in one issue, 10 pages in another issue. Um, if he can write 40 pages, that would be great. Because then that extends my 6 issue idea to then 8 issues. But either way, like I've loved and enjoyed writing this series, as well as like if it gets picked up by a publisher and if it does decent to where they're like, hey, like, got any more ideas or stories you want to do? Like, I still have a few written down that I haven't gotten to, but I want to cap it right now so I can move on to other stuff.
Yeah.
Cap it at 6 issues. I'll just write a 2-page story and then take a long break from it and pitch it once we're done with the first issue in terms of art and stuff. But it's a crazy wild ride, because like it's been, let's see, like a little over a month in just focusing on writing this. Like I haven't written anything else, it's just this. But yeah, once this is done, it's going to be a little bit weird going back to some other ideas and stuff, because it's just been ingrained in my head. Because that's also another thing, is like it's an anthology. There is an overall theme and an overall setting, but each story is so different. It's like so weird and different, to where, yes, it's 6 issues, but it ultimately is like I've written 23 very different and unique stories, to where like I'm gonna have to take a day or two to like deprogram once I'm done writing this last story, so I can like then hop into another series, because we talked about that last episode of writing another series. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's going to take me a day or two to deprogram before I actually can focus on a different series that isn't like this one. But it's relieving. It's ultimately a big relief, because like, it's finally done, like almost like a month and a week worth of writing. But it's also a little bit sad, because it's like, dang, like that's been, in terms of my free time, aside from like spend time with family or doing things here and there, like that's been my free time the past month and a half or month and a week, is writing this series. So yeah, it's just weird. That I guess that's ultimately what I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they going to be like? Is it going to be primarily humor? Is it going to be primarily horror? Is there a mix of
It's
things? Is there
so it's a
something
little
different?
it's a mix of things. It is ultimately a comedy. Like all of these stories are comedies. Some dark comedies, some like kind of silly, like weird, like regular show like, or like Adult Swim like. And then like a good bit of them. That's the thing, is like there's comedies and stuff, but a lot of them are kind of like satire of this specific setting. I've told you about, but I won't announce it just yet. It's satire of like these elements of like, hey, like this is how these people actually are, or this is how this is or that is or whatever. Like nearly all the stories have an element like that. So I've really enjoyed writing that. Like hey, I can write like silly dumb comedy all day of the week, but I like it when there's a little bit more to it. Like
Discomfort.
Discomfort. Yeah, discomfort in like when you realize that it
Yeah.
is kind of real. um but I do like having a little bit of depth with my comedy writing when I do that. Again, I love writing fun dumb stuff.
Mhm.
But like this type of stuff, like I'm a little bit more proud of it because there's a discussion more than just like, oh my gosh, like that poop joke, like other than just that.
Right. All right, Brandon. Looking forward to all that. I'm assuming that's like next year's release.
Yeah, pretty. It should be like end of next year or beginning of next or 2025 would be like a release. Pretty much what I'm going to do is probably beginning of the year, January. I'll probably put a call out to artists like on social medias and stuff, and start finding an artist for the book. And I'll tell them like, hey, like this is for issue one right now. I'm paying you. You're like, don't,
Mhm.
you're getting paid to do an issue one, but there's the potential for a mini series if it gets picked up by a publisher.
Following the Comic Lab guys,
Hmm.
they have severely pushed being utterly independent as you can get. Um, and uh, but that's functioning as writer and as artist.
Yeah.
Um, what are, what is your supposed difference here, and uh, what is your plan? I suppose if I'm not sure how
If it
to
if it
even.
didn't get picked up,
Well, yeah, like if because I mean, what's so my main question is just going to be what's the difference as a writer strictly that is this going to be a better route in your foreseeable future than being utterly independent? And then I guess my next question would be like, what's wrong with a Patreon model or a Kickstarter model being your primary kind of source of doing all this, especially since you've been able to do successful Kickstarters in the past.
I'll start with the second question first. The issue with the Patreon model, and I'm still going to do Kickstarters with like the series that I have
Mm-hmm.
through Dismaycomics. The issue with Patreon for me specifically is I'm a writer. Like I can't like a lot of times if if it's comics and it's a writer and you're subscribed to a Substack or you're subscribed to a Patreon, like you're as a subscriber wanting to see pages, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
like roughs, if it's just sketches or inks or colors or finish page,
Yeah.
like you're wanting to see pages. And for me, the issue is like I I can't just keep paying uh like artists
Mm-hmm.
like on a regular like I am paying out of pocket for these series over here, such as Gallows Man, Dismay Avenue, Tales from Town City, but I can't do that with all of my series. And yes, there is the Kickstarter part where it does cover a lot of stuff, but a lot of times those Kickstarters, I'd have to bump it up a lot higher in terms of the goal for it to cover the artist cost.
Mm-hmm.
And likely, at least as I am now, I don't know if we would meet those Kickstarter goals where it does cover the artist costs, where like I get reimbursed for paying out of pocket for the artist. Ultimately, I'm okay with paying out of pocket for the artist, but um, yeah, the thing that has, I guess, somewhat like not entirely split me in terms of like I'm doing my Dismay comic stuff over here where it's all me. And then also over here, I want to do stuff with other publishers. Is ultimately, I just can't currently keep doing. this model
Hmm.
on my own. The paying out of pocket in terms of like the volume I want to put out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to just put out 2 or 3 books a year. I want to put out as much as I can. Um, and if a publisher or entity can help with that, as well as I still maintain all of the rights, then I'm okay with that as a writer. Because at the end of the day, like, yes, one, it's like volume, it's helping put it out. It also somewhat reduces the workload on me because when you are self publishing, you're doing everything in terms of the marketing, this, that, whatever it may be, to where I can't write as much. And I do love writing. The things I love the most is writing, working with the artist, and editing. Those are the three passions I have when it comes to making comics. All the other stuff I like, but it takes up a ton of time to where it takes away from those three things I really love.
Hmm.
Working for a publisher, though, I will have more time to actually write because they're picking up some responsibilities. They're picking up the responsibility of printing. They're picking up the responsibility. A lot of times they have an editor. They're picking up the responsibility of meticulously going through the comic and
Hmm.
seeing what corrections need to be made. Because that's also a fault of my own is like I am an obsessive perfectionist when it comes to stuff I do or make. I've gotten better over the years, but it's almost to an unhealthy degree where I'm just like spending way too much time on it when I could be spending that time doing something else with the craft. Uh, so, with working with a publisher, the big things are like it gives me more time to do the thing that I really love, such as writing, working with the artist, working with an editor, and all the other things are more focused on them. But I am okay with having a say in it. Uh, so there's that, as well as like there is the cost thing. Like, hey, like I'm not doing all the payment stuff, as well as like, hey, I'm actually making like a slight profit in terms of like my writing. Like if I get that deal where it's a $500 an issue or
Hmm.
more or whatever it may be, it's like, hey, like I'm okay with this as long as I maintain the rights. Like if they maintain like a comic publishing right in terms of like it'll be published under us for blank amount of years, because
Hmm.
that's ultimately what those are. It's never like, hey, like we own this forever. It's usually blank amount of years, and then you renew it because reprints and stuff like that. Um, I'm okay with that. As if it goes through that publisher and we signed on for this many years in terms of like they have the comic right in terms of like publishing uh, for a set amount of years, as well as I still have some rights there as well in terms of like
Hmm.
this is still mine. I own it. Specifically, all other media, I still own that. Uh, I'm I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it is because if you ask Brandon 2 years ago, if you asked him 2 years ago, this whole thing, I would be completely self-published.
Hmm.
I'd be completely self-published. Um, but the big thing is like the past year of my life, like there's been a lot of like behind the scenes, like family stuff to where it's like money and stuff, like supporting people,
Right.
uh, to where like I want to be able to do that, but I also want to be able to write.
Hmm.
And I like one day I want like my focus and career to be on writing. It doesn't have to just be comics writing. It could be Christian novel writing or Christian comics writing or whatever it may be. But eventually, I do want to get out of youth ministry and try to see if I can have a focus on writing.
Right.
Um, so it sounds kind of bad, but I'm slightly trying to kickstart that
Yeah.
with working with a publisher. If it goes bad, it goes bad. But yeah, the past year with developments in my life, I just want to kind of go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I ultimately want to get these stories out. And if a publisher can get like this comic, for example, there'll be like 6 issues. If they can get an issue out every month or an issue out every couple of months, I'm happy with that because that's better than what I can do with Dismaycomics in my life, as well as running Dismaycomics. Is like I can put 2 or 3 comics out a year, and with working with a publisher, I could have multiple comics coming out all at once. Whereas Dismaycomics, this one series, for it to be completely out, be 2 to 3 years by the time everyone gets it. And then I then am putting out the next series. Whereas I'd like to get these ideas out, because these aren't the only comic ideas I have.
Right.
Or the comic stories I have. Like it's not like, oh, once these are out, I'm done. Like I'm still writing a ton of stuff. I want to get as much stuff as I can get out. And writing wise, in terms of like putting stuff out, not have any regrets in terms of like, I never got this out or I never got that out.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Well, I've kind of been on that same boat as far as like hoping that I can get all the story that I have in my brain out before the end of my life. But we could die tomorrow, so
yeah.
And
that's the thing, like that's the thing is like it's not like if I like become terminally ill today, it's like, oh no, I wasn't able to get all my ideas out or whatever. It's not that big of a deal to me. At the end of the day, like I know where my true focus in life is, and that's my family and my faith. Like, that's my true focus. This is ultimately like the hobbies of my like. I know that sounds bad. I am extremely passionate about making comics. Right. I'm as passionate, if not more passionate, than other people. But ultimately, the focus is God and my family, and then everything else follows under.
Well, I see your point in like you don't have content that you're distributing for a Patreon type situation. Although it had me churning my gears and I think there's probably a way. I think that maybe the artist, because when an artist makes everything, he has a whole process that he goes through. I went and saw one of your TikTok pages of an artist that did the Tales from Town City variant cover, and I watched him draw it, and he's got an archive of everything that he does.
Yeah, I have all of the comics. I have all their sketches. I have all their inks, all their colors, all their finished pages. I have all of those. But the big thing is I don't want to just put out their stuff as well as like the old stuff. Like, hey, this comic from a couple years ago. Like, here's some of the stuff. No, I want to do that type of stuff. Well, I want to do that type of stuff for like when it's collected. Yeah. In the back of the books, you have that type of stuff where you see the behind the scenes type of stuff, because that's what I like with the collected versions of like trades and stuff. Whenever there's thought put into a trade, when there's you have the story, but then like this is cool seeing like the concept sketches, like different stuff like that. Like I I kind of want to save that for those collections in a way.
Well, my only thing that if I feel like I went through a publisher is, for one, artists when they're under uh, a big title like DC or Marvel or something, they're not guaranteed the next day
Yeah,
for their income. Um, and now they do have the notoriety. They do have that we worked for Marvel. We worked for DC. We have that on the resume. So that's like a big bonus. Um, but as far as the income goes, they don't have that under their belt, and or they don't have the guarantee. And then
yeah,
as well, if they make their own property, if they make their own character and they make their own setting and they have their own original idea go through one of these publishers, it's a very brand new thing, and the likelihood that it'll catch fire is low. And I think that those publishers would be like, we'll promote this as long as we break even
yeah,
on what
yeah,
we on our investment on it, and then after that, promoting it is either A, under some kind of guidelines under a contract, or B, it's all up to you to do the promotion of this property, um, and then it still doesn't, and then you just get a percentage of the royalties from from that comic distribution, um, because then that cost is cut in half by all the middlemen that has to distribute it, and the bookstores that hold it on their shelves, and that type of thing. So, um, for me, I was under the impression that I could probably do, get like a few hundred Patreon like a year ago or 2 years ago. I was like, yeah, I'll have like 100 Patreon subscribers, easy. Like that won't be a problem. And boy, was I wrong. And I thought, there'd be like followers that would be consistent and stuff like that. And I mean, I was promoting my webtoon kind of wrong. Like I was just showing like my behind the scenes kind of process on Instagram. You can see it all on my early Instagram posts, and um, trying to get people to go to Webtoon, download the app. It's on the logo looks like this. I put the Webtoon logo on everything, and as far as that being okay, I wasn't sure, but I also wasn't making money off of it, so um, I figured they wouldn't care as long as they got traffic towards their app. But then you download the app, and then there was all these other flashy things in front of you that you might want to check out instead of my comic. So um, getting traction was very difficult. And then I started listening to Comic Lab, and they're like, listen, it's probably going to be at least 5 years before you have the traction that you were expecting for your first year. And so I'm having to try and accept that reality and be like, this is going to be a long, long process. But again, this is as an artist, so I have a lot of extra vision in my brain that goes with the writing, and my writing has to kind of be stunted so that I can catch up to with my writing. I can't let my writing head try and be like the story, because my
because you gotta catch
the
up and do the
drawing
art.
is not
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
keep up with that. Um, so, if you have a plethora of ideas and story as a writer to just throw at them, you know, and you get a lot of those to hit, then I can see publishing being, or going through a publisher being easier on that front.
Yeah, I'm ultimately trying to do that because at the very least, like let's say no publishers pick it up. At the very least, I'm going to have at least one issue of this thing done. And the plus side with this comic, as well as the other two comics that I plan on pitching to publishers, because that's another thing, is I'm going to have like at least two, if not three comics I'm going to pitch to publishers. That way there's more variety they can see. And then if some publisher is just gung ho and it's like, we like them all. All right, let's make a deal with all of them or whatever. Like that's great. But yeah, like if no publishers picked up any of these 2 or 3 titles, with each of these titles, I'm going to have an issue 1 done for each of them because I am pitching. Like how I'm pitching is, this is what it looks like. Here's an issue 1. And if they don't pick it up, it's like, I've got an issue 1 done. Let's do a Kickstarter. It'll just go under Dismaycomics. Yeah. So either way, the book is being made. If it goes under Dismaycomics, you might just get 1 or 2 issues per title. But you'll still get that book. It's not like the books will never happen. Yeah, exactly. I just want to try with the publisher to help get that volume out. And with me pitching multiple things and each one having a complete issue done so they can see basically what the series will be, as well as I've made comics in the past. This isn't my first rodeo, as well as I'm self-published, so I know all the ins and outs of all this stuff.
Right.
So they can also look at that for credibility. And luckily, it's not like I planned this. Luckily, something like Tales from Town City, it's not the same as 2 of these titles I'm going to be pitching, but it is anthology comedy. And I am very proud of this. So this is one of the references basically I'm going to send in, is like, here's something I've done before. It's not this style of comedy in these 2 series, but it is anthology comedy that I've written before. So yeah, if it gets picked up by like a fairly decent / fairly big indie publisher, great. If not, if it gets picked up by a small indie publisher, and yet they're still willing to flip the bill in terms of those costs I talked about before, I'm still okay with that.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get picked up by any publishers, I'm still going to put 1 or 2 issues out of each of these titles. So at the end of the day, I'm still going to be making comics, whether it goes through a publisher or not.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, it sounds like a solid plan. Sounds real good. I think we're going to close it here on that note. You've been watching the American Dismay podcast. I'm Austin Light, and this was Brandon Ingram. And we will catch you in 2 weeks.
Take care.